This is about VICIdial. Usually I don't come here and talk about VICIdial. I talk about stuff we've done with VICIdial. But this is kind of an overview of what VICIdial is, what the history of it was, and some issues we ran into along the way and where it's going. So, what is VICIdial? Well, it's an open source contact center suite. It's free. We don't charge anything for it. Just like Asterisk, anybody can go and use it without asking for permission. Just go and download it and they can start using it. It does inbound, outbound, and blended call handling, inbound email, website customer chat as well, all within the same agent screen. Runs on top of Asterisk, of course. It does not run on top of any other open source telephony engine, including FreeSwitch, so don't ask. Web-based user interfaces. They're also available in multiple languages. We have 16 languages for the agent screen, 7 for administrative, and as of a couple years ago, we made a way to make and edit your own language translations on the fly. So you could take an existing translation and change it slightly, or just add phrases as you want, or just change phrases as you want, or just remove phrases. We've had people do that as well. We'll be talking more about that in a slide later. So why was VICIdial created back in 2003? 2 reasons. Because Asterisk was available, and one of our clients' lack of millions of dollars to buy a commercial outbound dialing solution for a 200-seat call center. That is sadly true. We were looking for a solution for them. They had to scale from 25 seats up to 200. They were just doing manual list dialing, and there was really nothing out there that just offered that without offering a whole bunch of stuff that they didn't need. And the cost was $1 to $2 million to start, not including licensing fees, hardware fees, or any of the other stuff you needed to actually get it running. So that's why VICIdial got started. Really, my experience with open source telecom starts back in 2002 with my very frustrating experience working with Dialogic and Bayonne. If you've ever heard of the Bayonne project, you can still find references to it out there. It took me 2 months to get a Dialogic and Bayonne IVR up and running. And it was very frustrating. And I had to hire professional support to get it working. And then in 2003, I found Digium and Asterisk. And I bought a T1 card, and within 2 hours, I had replicated my 2-month project with Bayonne and Dialogic. So I was blown out of the water. It had the Asterisk Manager interface, it had AGI programming, so you could do all sorts of interactive stuff, interacting with other back-end systems. And so later that year, I started the ASD GUI client project as a GPL license project on SourceForge. It was Perl only at that point. There was kind of a phone companion application. That was what ASD GUI client originally was. And VICIdial was kind of a companion to that. And it started as a Perl TK click-to-dial user application. Then the next year, we got clients for VICIdial. This was a niche that had a lot of people looking for because commercial predictive dialer software, not even, it wasn't predictive at that point. Commercial dialer software was just really expensive, and there was nothing in the low cost or open source arena for that. We added auto dialing, not predictive dialing, but multiple line per agent dialing. We added inbound call handling, but you had to use a separate web-based application to do it, in addition to your Perl TK application that was installed on every agent workstation. We also added the ability to send calls to other agent groups. So you'd place an outbound call, and then you could forward it to an inbound group. And that was also the year of the first Astricon in 2004 in Atlanta, and I went there and spoke about VICIdial and our central command queue system. And this is what the very first, or one of the first versions of VICIdial looked like. And yes, it is ugly. It was pretty simple to program. It was something you had to install Perl on a workstation, whether it be Windows or Linux. You had to install all the TK modules. You had to configure a configuration file manually You had to hard code it to a telephone, but it worked. And this is how VICIdial entered the world. Then in 2005, after really Firefox 1.0 came out, and they had a stable standard implementation of Ajax. That's something that worked with Internet Explorer, a little buggy at the time, but with Firefox, we really finally had a platform where Ajax was reliable and could operate for hours with a dynamic, JavaScript website. So we wrote our first web-based agent screen, which was wonderful because now you didn't need to have separate installation and configuration. You could just use a web server or a web browser with a web server. We added blended inbound and outbound call handling, so you could handle all those at once, all at the same time in the web application. We added a script tab so that you could pop up a dynamic script with names and places and addresses and things populated in it. Hotkeys, which was a feature that let you hang up and disposition a call just by pressing one number key on your system. We added multi-server so that you could have larger deployments. And we did our first alternate language build of Spanish. And this was back when we did static translations, where we had to do a build every time we wanted to do a new translation. And this is the first crude, rudimentary 2005 agent screenshot in a web browser. In 2006, we won the SourceForge Project of the Year for VoIP applications. We added scheduled callbacks, alternate phone number dialing, predictive algorithm. The first iteration of that was added in 2006. We moved to Subversion for code control and development. Wonderful choice. Very glad that we're using that. You can always go back and see, when exactly did I make this change that caused a bug from 3 years ago that I just found out about today? There it is. Okay, yeah. So it really helps to solve problems as well as be able to roll things back. And if you're managing any kind of large project, a code control is essential, whether it be Subversion or Git or whatever you want to use. This is a screenshot from 2006, a little more refined, a lot more options, especially in the transfer side of things. In 2007, a lot happened. We added skills-based routing. We partnered with one of our clients to put Q metrics logging. You'll see them down in the expo hall. It's kind of a separate set of logs that exists coexists with VICIdial. It also helped us to fix a lot of issues with our logging because now we had kind of an audit log set of logging that was done in a completely different way. We added list mix, which I'm still not sure was a good idea or not. It's complicated. It gets some of our clients into trouble, which is why we put warnings on there, but there it is. We started supporting Asterisk 1.4. That was after 1.4.18. I think it had been released for almost 2 years at that point. It was finally stable. We had our first official VICIdial training class. We founded the VICIdial Group company to provide VICIdial support, and we also launched our first attempt at a hosted service during 2007. The next year, we took a prize at a German conference for voice applications. We added queue prioritization, allows different queues to be prioritized over others for call handling. Time clock, so agents can punch in and out. The DID call routing was moved to web administration, making that a lot easier. We added our first basic APIs. We added more inbound features like estimated hold time, place in line, hold time options, some other things that are pretty standard in other systems. Now, of course, I need to mention this isn't a comprehensive list of features. Every year we literally add dozens and dozens of new features. And those are all detailed in the update document that's included in VICIdial. We also did our first release of the VICIbox demo live CD, so people could pop it in their machine and test out what VICIdial worked like. 2009, we integrated with Sangoma's CPD answering machine detection, which sadly is now dead. So if you go down to Sangoma's booth, you might want to heckle them for that. We added in-depth VTiger integration during this year, which we pretty much abandoned after all of our clients abandoned it less than 2 years later. VTiger's a mess. Does not scale well. Lots of other issues with it. We added agent shift enforcement. Lets agents only log in during specified times and days and times. We put audio prompts and music on hold in the web config. We added integration with Kepstrel text-to-speech for inbound and outbound. We finished off our web-based Asterisk configuration, where you configure phones, you configure IVRs, things like that, and it creates the conf files within Asterisk and then forces reloads to those modules. So it's all automatic. And we released our version 2.2. And we also put out our first VICIbox server installation, which at that time was Ubuntu based. This is a screenshot. We switched to gray, a little more refined at that point. 2010, we added Orex screen and call recording compatibility. They're actually right next to us down in the expo hall. We added Zoiper web phone agent screen integration. Allows the web phone to be loaded right in the same web browser screen. The web IVR configuration, call menus, so you can do step-based IVRs, collecting data, that kind of stuff. Custom list fields. This is basically what replaced VTiger because VTiger didn't scale well. We developed custom list fields, which is a way of adding pretty much as many fields as you want and have it be optimized for scalability. You could have millions of records and it's not going to kill your database like some of the CRM systems like VTiger do when you get to that level. We changed to an advanced real-time report, which was reloaded by Ajax, gave some more options, little prettier display, and we started adding more integration options like start and dispo call URLs. 2011, we won Best in Show at IT Expo. We added user group segmentation. That was actually for the French Health Service. That was an interesting project. It has a lot of the facets of tenanting, where you can have certain groups not have any knowledge of the other groups or their campaigns or lists or in-groups or anything like that. So it lets you separate different groups and actually families of groups as well. Inbound agent probability routing, that one was fun. That allows us to route calls to agents based on a probability engine, with some agents having higher probability than others. Phone login load balance grouping. That's a pretty complex concept to talk about, but basically it's based around having multiple servers and having agents that could log into any of those servers. It's kind of a load balancing, failover, redundancy type of solution that we added. It helps a lot of our larger clients. And we added advanced auto-alt number dialing. That was for our collections clients, needing to call up to 16 phone numbers for a single account. 2012, we released 2.4, had web-based lead management tools, quality control was added, inbound lead search, so you could actually switch the lead ID of the call while an agent was on that call. And we added inbound email agent handling, where agents in amongst taking calls and everything like that could also handle email. 2013, we released 2.7. We added report logging. Of course, this was because of clients who did things like had one of their managers run a 6-month-long report during production hours that locked up their database, and they called us screaming, wanting to know who did it. So we added report logging, and now you can go in and you can see who ran it, what they selected, what time they ran it, what IP address they ran it from, so those people can be punished. And yeah, that frequently happens. We added holiday call time restrictions, encrypted passwords. This was 2013 is what I call our summer of security. That's when we had a specialized open source security consultant who actually took a look at our code, went through it, exposed a lot of the glaring holes that we had left in it, and we spent a great deal of time just going through and fixing and plugging those holes, adding things like maximum number of failed attempts before your account's locked for 15 minutes, stuff like that, to make it more like other wide-scale projects that are more secure. We also added cell phone number filtering in conjunction with DNC.com for that horrible law, the TCPA, that basically says you can never call anybody with a cell phone legally. Yes, sir?
Where do you get your database for that, and is it updated every?
It is updated daily. We built in the ability to do filters daily. It uses I believe it's Newstar data. They're the government-mandated monopoly company. DNC.com partners with them and offers the downloads through their own service. It's a batch download service. I think it's around $4,000 a year. But it will filter and scrub all of the cell phones. It uses the number portability database, so it does change on a daily basis. We do polling here in Florida, and we regularly scrub numbers, and the city that we're in has a mayoral election, and we've been scrubbing the numbers, and just between August and September, there were 52,000 numbers that we were able to call in the city. 24 of them switched from wireline to cell phone in 1 month. So, and that's pretty standard. It's a daily thing, and we have clients that scrub daily, and we have clients that, in a 1 million record database, they might lose a dozen a day.
Is there a way to override that and say that it's okay to call it?
Of course there is. There are always ways around that. We have clients that have every combination of, we want the cell phone numbers deleted immediately. We want the cell phone numbers put into a separate list. We want the cell phone numbers sent over to a separate cluster that has had auto dialing disabled on it. There are ways to do all of that, and we've been through every combination of that with our clients. So, yes, sir. It depends on your lawyer, but and what you consider TCPA compliant. There are varying degrees of TCPA compliance. If you go by the majority of court rulings, if you have human intervention per phone call, then it's okay. It's TCPA compliant. If you go by the letter of the law, a system that is capable of storing phone numbers and placing phone calls, anything with a redial button is an auto dialer, and you can't call any cell phone ever from anything with a redial button. So I usually, during our training classes, we could talk for about an hour about TCPA, but in general, yeah, the October 13th or 16th is when the new rules went in place from the FCC on the TCPA. So that's why we got this running over the summer of 2013 and partnered with DNC.com to get that working. Also that year, we added Asterisk 1.8 support. Yay. In 2014, we released 2.9. We added our database languages translation code, which was actually touched every portion of the web screens. I'll go into that later. We added agent audio soundboards. It allows you to use a selection of audio prompts, click on them to play them as an agent. There's a screen of it later. And did a ton of code cleanup. Basically, the switch to database language translation meant that we had to touch every bit of code that output any bit of English. So that's a lot. I'll go into that in a minute. The next year, 2015, we released 2.11. We added customer website chat. There's a screenshot of it later. It allows you to have customers on a website chat with agents in their agent screen. We added manager to agent and agent to agent chat functionality. We added additional list filtering with DNC.com's filtering features. They've got a lot of them. We added agent screen debug logging. This has proven to be invaluable for clients that have weird issues, sometimes network issues. And we added Asterisk 11 support in 2015. And last year we released 2.13, did a bit of a redesign of the admin web screens, added icons, color schemes, changeable color schemes and logos, things like that. We added WebRTC compatibility for the agent screen. We also have our own WebRTC phone that's kind of been in testing for a while. Hopefully it will be released publicly, open source for free soon, by the end of the year. Thanks, Mike. Mike's the one working on it, by the way. Screen color templates, which I mentioned. We were also named CIO's Reviews, one of the most promising contact or call center softwares. This year, we've added a lot. Automated reports, allowing you to email or FTP reports at an automated schedule. IP lists blocking, this is for the web only. This doesn't include the Asterisk side of things, but you can selectively, per user group, set up whitelisting for IP addresses. You could also do a blacklist for the system-wide. Drop list, which allows you to create new lists out of dropped calls elsewhere across in-groups and outbound calls. We added inbound forecasting report using the Erlang calculations. That was a project that, unfunded project that we had been working off and on for about 5 years, mostly off. Cross-cluster communication, that's been a fun one, where you could have multiple separate VICIdial clusters, and you can transfer a call with the full customer data at the same time, and you can configure it all only using web configs. So it's much easier to do than what you had to go through to do it before. We added agent events, HTTP push. That's a pretty good one for integrations, where you're trying to use, for instance, your own CRM, and you want to know when events are happening, like when's the customer dispoing a call, because I want to do something then. And HTTP push means that you don't have to constantly poll the system to find out what the agent state is. It's going to send you the agent state of every agent to your own system. The Sangoma CPD, CPA, Lyra, those are 3 names that it's been known under. Parazip, yeah, 4 names. Went end of life earlier this year, unfortunately. That's a call progress analysis, answering machine detection, much more accurate, a lot more complex to set up and manage, but it was a pretty good option that several of our clients had used. It's proprietary, pay for, but no longer an option for us. And as of this week, we have added Asterisk 13 support, which is something Mike is going to talk about tomorrow, and I'll mention that again. But now I'm going to show a bunch of slides of basically what VICIdial looks like before I get into some more talking points. This is a Spanish agent screen with Spanish buttons and Spanish text, and yes, some of it is rather verbose. But this kind of gives you an example of what you can do with the alternative languages. This is what an agent soundboard looks like. The layout of this is completely up to you. You can create columns, you can have lines that go all the way across, you can have comment lines. It's dynamic, and you basically choose the audio files you want to play when each button is pushed. This is the real-time admin screen. Shows you what's going on in your call center. This is from, oh, it's from last year. Just one of our clients, they have 119 agents logged in. This client goes up to 350 in this cluster, I believe. Places up to 1.5 million calls a day. This is the inbound forecasting report. Pretty graphs, ooh. This kind of, the whole point of this is to say, show me what happened last Monday so I know how many agents I need to have in place every hour. It's a standard forecasting report. So you can see when you have not enough agents, when you have too many agents, You can go historical, you can go a week's worth of time, a month's worth of time. And it all displays this pretty graph. And actually below the screen that you can't see, there are a bunch of records of data, tables of data. It gives you more information on what you're seeing in the graph above. This is an example of different screen colors and a slightly different logo. This is the purple scheme. We have purple, red, green, all sorts. We have clients that have made several. We actually added this for a client that had three separate clusters for three separate purposes, and one of their managers accidentally changed something in one of the clusters because they forgot the cluster they were managing. And it apparently caused a lot of problems. And so they said, how do we fix this? I'm like, how about we change the colors and the logos? Like, that's exactly what we need. So you can change this on the fly on your system if you want. This is an example of customer chat. We've set this up for, I don't know, I think about a dozen of our clients. There are all sorts of different options involved in this. You can have a live button on your website that knows whether you have agents available or not. And you can have it display different things depending upon whether the agents are available. The customer clicks on it. They put in, their name, maybe a phone number, maybe an email address. They click submit. They get put into the queue. And this is an example of what happens when they get into that. This is what the customer sees. So, planned future features. Well, with Sangoma's exit from CPD, we are considering again LumenVox, although they really don't like answering my questions. So, but hopefully we have a big client behind it. With a rather large quote out there to LumenVox, maybe they'll be more apt to answer my questions now. They offer a CPD functionality with sit tone detection. Still not sure how they get it to work with Asterisk exactly pre-answer, but hopefully we'll find that out. The ability for agents to pause recordings. This one's a tough one because it actually stops the stream of the recording and stops the size of the recording file, which is how we evaluated whether we should process the recording file or not. So that's going to be a rather significant project in its own. Area code dialing suppression features. We've kind of worked around this using filters in the past, but the ability to have more control over area code suppression is something we're looking into in the future. Also more remote system monitoring options. Issues working with Asterisk. Yeah. Mike is presenting tomorrow on just the issues we ran into going from Asterisk 11 to 13. But in general, from the beginning, when I was working on a call center application, I looked at Asterisk queues, but Asterisk queues was actually not very stable, not reliable, not consistent in how it worked, and not scalable. So it was really not a good platform. It was a single server solution only. It was full of bugs, 14 years ago. There were also no bridging functions other than Meet Me, really, at that time. So looking into Meet Me, I realized it does everything we need it to do. It has all the options we need to function as an agent bridging engine, so that's what we used, and that's what we're still using. It's efficient, it is incredibly stable, and with the way that we engineered VICIdial to work, we can still operate across multiple servers. As we discovered, especially in the 1.4 branch and pretty much the entire set of 1.6 branches, a lot of Asterisk releases just can't be used because of bugs and crashing issues at high load. So for a while, we were releasing our own patched versions of VICIdial. We're still doing that today, although a lot less patching is needed with Asterisk 13. Oh yeah, patching Asterisk, sorry. Also, some of the issues Mike's going to touch on is the changing or removing of core Asterisk functions. Show channel's concise? You don't need that. It's been in there for 14 years. Nah, get rid of it. We'll replace it with this thing that doesn't work as well. Okay. So hopefully we'll get into AstroDevCon next year, and we'll be able to stop them from trashing core functionality in Asterisk in the future. I kind of touched on this before, the VICIdial agent screen evolution. We started with Perl TK. It required you to go to every workstation, install Perl, install the VICIdial application, manually configure a text file, and then test it to make sure it worked. It was very time consuming. Every time you had any kind of minor upgrade, you had to copy all those files, all the VICIdial files, back over to every workstation. The move to Ajax was great. It came at the perfect time. The agent phone configurations were moved to a database. No software was required if you had a hard phone, beyond having a web browser. Codes on the server, upgrades were easy because all you had to do was upgrade the web server files. It was more complicated. Programming Perl TK was actually pretty easy. Ajax is complicated. You had to introduce blocking because the A in Ajax is asynchronous, meaning I'm going to do this and then I'm going to go off and do other stuff. And this may or may not come back at some point in time in the future. Hopefully it will. And so we had to build a lot more double checking into it, and it really required a lot of work to get it functional and reliable. Also, the Ajax toolkit packages really didn't work because VICIdial is too complex. It has over 100 Ajax calls in it. It's got dozens and dozens of functions that operate at timed intervals, and none of the Ajax toolkits at the time, or even recently, really have the low enough overhead to be able to do that without crashing your browser. So here's a little more on the agent screen translations. Several years ago, we switched to UTF-8 because we had a lot of clients internationally that had issues using our Latin-based screen. The translation of phrases are stored in the database. It's all database driven. It's all rendered on the fly when the agent screens are brought up or the prompts are brought up. There are over 1,000 phrases in the agent screen, over 6,000 phrases in the admin screen. Live phrase lookup is part of the core code now. So, and really it had very little to no impact on load, which is something that really surprised me, but we did a lot of testing before we put it live. And we looked at a lot of different options for translations. There were about four options out there. And just doing the live translation directly from the database was the most efficient, the easier to integrate with what we had. And it ended up being very low load, so that was great. At this time, I always like to mention native speaker input is very important, although it can be frustrating. Our first translation, the Spanish translation, we had input from somebody from Spain, somebody from Mexico, and somebody from Colombia. And they actually spent over a month arguing over, what the word for this or that should be. But we ended up, the initial versions, we haven't had native speakers really do much to contribute lately, but the core version ended up being very good. The French was mostly done by Google. The most recent one, which was probably the longest one, was Japanese. And if you know anything about Japanese, they have three alphabets. And they sometimes use them interchangeably, and sometimes they've made up new words. And so we had two professional translation companies do professional translations for the agent screen. And then we also used Google Translate. We sent them this spreadsheet with all these phrases in it. And about 2/3 of the time, they selected one of the phrases we had done. And 1/3 of the time, they put something completely different in. So, but we have a full and complete Japanese agent screen translation as well. How do you make money? Yeah, we get asked this all the time. VICihost, that's actually our primary breadwinner now. It's our hosted VICIdial. Client comes to us, they don't want to manage the server. Sometimes they don't want to manage having a carrier. They just want a call center solution. We manage it. We do it per month per server. They can scale. We have some clients with dozens of servers placing over 1 million calls a day. We also make money installing new VICIdial systems for clients, upgrade existing improperly installed VICIdial systems. That's the best part of open source. There are a lot of people who don't know what they're doing out there. And they get a system that's somewhat working, hobbling along, and then they can't fix a certain problem, and then we get called. So that works out great for us. Customization, we are constantly adding new code, new features, new reports, fixing things all the time. Selling the agent and admin manuals, it's a small thing that we get money in for, but it really does help to keep the open source project running. And of course, we do official training classes here in Florida 3 times a year. And we do sell some hardware, but that's mostly been declining since hosting has been growing a lot more. Why do enterprise users choose VICIdial? Number 1, no end of life. That's a big one. No per seat licensing cost. A very wide feature set. Internal control of code base. Higher degree of customization. Yes, we have commercial support. And it's actually, VICIdial is the most widely used full-feature contact center solution in the world. We also have several large clients who consider the use of VICIdial a competitive advantage over their competitors because it saves them money, makes them more efficient, and they have internal control. So they don't go through the shakeup every few years of their proprietary call center system company saying, oh, that's going end of life. It'll be $12 million in 3 years, and we'll integrate you with the new one. One of our clients, this was several years ago, is a large financial services company, publicly traded, multi-billion-dollar company. They have presence in most of the 50 states of the United States. Their call center system was purchased by another call center company. They were told it was going to go end of life, and so the board of directors set their IT people out on a quest to find a system that would not go end of life. So they looked around, they finally found us, and after talking with us and talking with all these other companies, some of the answers they got were, well, that'll be $50 million. You have to buy us. No. No. I think they talked to about 6 companies. And they finally got to us and they said, so what is this open source thing? Like, well, it's free, and you can use it any way you want, and you don't have to pay us anything. Okay, so what's the catch? Like, there is no catch, it's open source. So after a week's worth of meetings with their floor full of lawyers in Dallas, Texas, they finally approved us for use, and they have, I believe, 450 seats up and running in 2 call centers using VICIdial. They hired their own people, and after the first year alone, they saved over $500,000 just in licensing costs, and that includes the cost of their 6 full-time employees that do nothing but manage VICIdial. So that's just one example. Next, what the fork? Yes, there have been dozens of VICIdial forks created over the years. Most of them are one-offs. Most of them are very poorly done. Most of them die off after a few years, do not maintain security or stability updates. We get contacts from clients, new clients all the time, that are stuck with some dead-end fork of VICIdial. And, sorry, that's my timer saying, need to hurry up, you only have 3 minutes. Some are hosted-only servers and try to hide their VICIdial code use. There are some people here speaking at Asterisk that are using VICIdial. I'm interested to see if they actually mention that they use VICIdial because they've hidden it. There are quite a few companies that don't follow the AGPL, the license terms. That's kind of a variant of the GPL where any web user can request a source code. We're actually suing a company right now over that. We actually won and we're trying to collect, so we'll see how well that goes. But really the best way to stay on top is to constantly add new features and be responsive to the community. The community out there is the reason VICIdial got to where it is today. And it's the reason it's in use in as many companies that it's in use at today. And the bug tracking, more the bug tracking than the feature contributions, but it's been invaluable. It's like having a massive Q&A department out there in the world using your software and giving you feedback. And speaking of the community, there have been over 15,000 new VICIdial installs in the last 2 years, and this is just a map of, we did IP address mapping. When you do a fresh install of VICIdial, it downloads the phone codes table from us, which is country codes, area codes, time zones, something that changes a couple times a year. But it's always uploaded or downloaded when you do a new fresh install. So we took the unique IP addresses and mapped them out on this map, and that's what it looks like for the last 2 years. So, any questions? Yes?
You mentioned
Yes.
you mentioned a lot about Perl. Are you still using Perl? If not, why?
Back end. Pretty much all the back end, the constantly running scripts that watch processes that interact with Asterisk itself,
Okay.
that's all Perl. The AGI scripts are all Perl.
So the current source code that you give out is Perl.
The back end is Perl,
Back
all
end.
the front end is PHP. Everything's
Okay.
done through a database engine, MySQL, or
Yeah.
we prefer MariaDB because MySQL is messed up now.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, we still have a lot of Perl. Actually, quite a bit of that code, the core code, is very old, and Mike's going to talk about some of that tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
How does VICIdial make money? Volume.
Volume, yes.
Volume.
We give away as much as we can. Question mark. Profit.
Do you do anything with state calling regulations? Any kind of control over making calls based on individual states?
We do have state call times, which is a way like Rhode Island is a great example. You can't call in Rhode Island for sales on Sundays. You have separate, I think it's 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. that you can call on Saturdays. And then I believe it's like 9 to 8 on Monday through Friday. And actually you can program all of that into a Rhode Island calling rule and use that in call times. Customize it how?
The calling regulations for a particular area?
It's all customizable, yeah. You set the times you want to call each state.
Number of calls.
Per state?
Yeah.
Uh,
State you can only call two things. Yeah.
per lead, okay. Yeah, you could do that with filters, actually. There should be a way of doing that with filters. Any other questions?
Cool. Further questions? Anybody?
Just curious, how much percentage of that Perl is Perl code? How much of the code is Perl? I know nothing but Perl. That's why I'm interested in it.
I'm not sure how much of the code is Perl.
Give me an approximate.
I haven't done a line count.
Oh,
It's not as complex as the PHP Ajax stuff.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, functionally, it's about half the code, but
Okay.
in terms of lines, it's much less than half.
yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Any other
Oh,
questions?
over
Over
there.
there.
So you use a screen instead of running the process in background or any other technology. Why you choose a screen?
You mean?
There are many processes. Even Asterisk is running inside the screen.
Oh, you mean in Linux?
Yes.
The screen, SCREEN. Well, that started because of Asterisk and one of the many limitations of Asterisk running in high load. So what we figured out early on was if you're running Asterisk, you just start Asterisk and you disconnect from it. And then you make a change to something and you need to run a reload. If you ran that reload from a remote, if you did *-r, you did a remote connection reload, it had a very high probability on a heavy system of locking Asterisk. Unless you attached to the original Asterisk console, which running in a screen, you could issue commands to it, then it would not crash under high load. So that's why we started everything in screen.
Great, good. One more thing. In current, you told that you are working on recording pause.
Pause record, we're not working on it. It's for the future. We might work on it.
But that is already there right now in the current screen where agent can go and pause the recording.
You can stop the recording, but what we have clients that have requested the ability to pause the same recording instead of stopping the recording and creating a new one.
Yeah, if they're giving you the credit card number over the phone in the conversation, you don't want to record that.
Right, and there are other ways of handling that. We created a payment IVR where you can actually park call IVR. and say, just type the credit card number into the park when it asks for it, and then you'll come right back to me. We have a lot of clients that have done that. That's a core part of VICIdial as well. So that's another way of handling that instead of just stopping recordings. But yeah, stopping and pausing is different.
Hi, Matt. What is the recommended version, actually?
What's the recommended?
The recommended version in this moment? VICIdial.
Latest SVN trunk.
What is the most used version in? You know it, or you have that?
On hosted, we upgrade whenever a client needs a new feature. We upgrade them. We pretty heavily test our code before we put it in production, but we don't really have base versions. We just upgrade as needed, and we keep most of our clients on some SVN trunk version. Yeah, we don't really do too much, because we fix bugs as we go along as well. So there's not a lot of need to go back to specific versions for stability. Yeah.
Any planning to include Facebook, Twitter?
No. No. Some bad experiences. Back in 2014, Facebook decided, all these thousands of partners we have out there, we're just going to drop them all. No more API. We'll bring back an API, but it'll be under our terms. If you read the terms and conditions for Facebook, it is very bad for anybody that integrates with them. They can shut your account down at any moment for any or no reason. There are a lot of issues with doing Facebook integrations, Twitter as well. They hold all the cards. You have no recourse. The clients that you set up with those accounts have no recourse. They can shut you down at any point in time. What we've heard is that if you have a big enough advertising account, they'll let you do just about anything on Facebook.
And Zendesk.
And what?
Zendesk.
Zendesk. That's just an integration, a CRM integration. Do we have a Zendesk integration? I think we have a basic Zendesk integration, but it's mostly just search and, search based on phone number. We've done a lot of integrations with CRMs, and we've got a lot of tools to do those, like we've got it. Start call URL, dispo call URL, the agent push, a lot of ways of doing integrations fairly easily.
Okay, well, Matt will be available. Just flag him down anytime and ask him questions.
Yes, and we're in the expo hall,
Absolutely, they're in the
which
expo hall.
opens right now.
So why wouldn't you? So let's hear it for the mighty Matt Florell.